Hello friends, welcome to Hustles 24 IS. In this lecture video, we are going to solve the question number 10 of Opsc Preliminary Examination 2021. You know, we have already solved question number 1 to 9. This is question number 10. Question number 10 talks about different models of policy formulation. Actually, it is given about incremental model of policy formulation. It also talks about another model of policy formulation, that is rational choice model or comprehensive rational model or synoptic model of policy formulation. There are 5 statements given regarding these models of policy formulation, and we have to choose which of the following statements are correct. Okay, so question says consider the following statements in respect of incremental model of policy formulation. Now before proceeding towards the question, let me tell you, if this kind of question comes in the examination, then please leave these kind of questions. Why? Because a student is usually not expected to solve these kind of questions. This question is derived from our public administration optional. Okay, so you cannot solve this kind of questions. You simply leave if you encounter these kind of questions in the exam hall. Okay, so now question number 10. Consider the following statements in respect of incremental model of policy formulation. Number 1, the concept of incrementalism in policy formulation is put forward by Robert Dahl. Wrong, this is not put forward by Robert Dahl. This was actually put forward by Charles Lindblom. Okay, Charles Lindblom has formulated incrementalism. Okay, this is not Robert Dahl. Okay, wrong. So statement 1 is wrong. Statement II, the disjointed policy making depicts the policy making as a process of muddling through. This is correct. Okay, muddling through means coping or managing. Okay, the disjointed policy making, which was given by Charles Lindblom, okay, it depicts the policy making as a process of muddling through or coping or managing. Okay, this one is correct. Statement 2 is correct. We have 3. The synoptic model of policy formulation acknowledges man's limited problem solving capacities. As I was talking about, the question talks about 2 models. One is incremental model, which was given by Charles Lindblom. Second one is synoptic comprehensive rational model or comprehensive rational synoptic model. Okay, this third statement is about our second model. The synoptic model of policy formulation acknowledges man's limited problem solving capacities. This is wrong. Actually, it should have been the incremental model of policy formulation. Okay, the incremental model of policy formulation acknowledges man's limited problem solving capacities. Okay, so this one is also wrong. Now IV, disjointed incrementalism explains governmental decision making. Indeed, it is correct. Okay, disjointed incrementalism put forward by Charles Lindblom explains governmental decision making. Correct. Statement B, logical incrementalism explains strategy formulation in large and complex business organization. This one is also correct. Okay, so we found the statement 2, statement IV and statement B are correct. I and III are incorrect. So C is the correct option. Which of the following statements are either correct? I, IV and B. C is the correct option. Correct answer is C. Now we'll look into the detailed answer. Okay. So a detailed answer is rational choice theory is not a single theory. It is a family of theories. Okay. So now before moving forward deep into the discussion, let me tell you once again, this discussion we are talking about policy formulation or policy making in a government or in an organization. Okay. Policy making we are talking about. Okay. Now there are 2 models here. The topic of discussion are 2 models. One is the rational comprehensive synoptic model, or we can say comprehensive rational synoptic model. Second one is the incremental model. Okay. Now first one is the rational choice model or the rational model. The rational choice theory is a family of theories rather than a single theory. The idea of rationality has been the key factor in the study of policy or decision making in the post-Second World War era. Rational policy making means to choose one best option among policy alternatives. Okay, to choose one best option among the policy alternatives. That is all about rational policy making. So who has put forward it? It was given by, one such model was given by Thomas Dye in 1980, who talked about rationality is equal to efficiency. So he said, when a policy is rational, he said a policy is rational when the difference between the values it achieves and the values it sacrifices is positive and greater than any other policy alternative. We have learned that in rational model, the correct policy is about choosing one best option among the alternatives. Okay, so in that best option, what should happen? A policy is rational when the difference between the value it achieves and the value it sacrifices is positive. That means the net value is positive and is greater than any other policy alternative. Okay. Rationalism involves calculation of all social, political and economic values sacrificed or achieved by a public policy. Okay. Next, what are the requirements of rational analysis? Rational analysis. What are the requirements? Thomas Dye has said there are many requirements or limitations of rational analysis. In his view, or in the view of Thomas Dye, a policymaker must know all the society's value preferences and their relative weights, understand all the policy alternatives available, know all the consequences of each policy alternative, calculate the ratio of benefits to cost for each policy alternative, and select the most efficient policy alternative. Okay, so these are the requirements of rational analysis. So a policymaker who is doing the rational policy analysis must know all these factors or all these requirements. Next, then the disadvantages. We know all these factors or all the requirements must be known by a policymaker if he is formulating the rational policy making. So these are broadly the disadvantages. Okay, so the disadvantages are rational policy making is a very difficult exercise. It requires capacity to foresee the consequences of alternative policies. As we know, we are choosing, or a rational or a policy maker who is formulating rational policy making is choosing one best alternative, one best option among the alternatives. Okay, so he requires the capacity to foresee the consequences of alternative policies and the intelligence to calculate correctly the ratio of cost to benefit. Okay, that means in cost benefit analysis must be doing. Okay, so practically there are many obstacles to realization of this degree of rationality. Now to overcome these limitations or the demerits or disadvantages, Charles Lindblom has formulated the incremental model. Charles Lindblom has criticized the rational policy making model and has formulated his own incremental model. So what he says, Charles Lindblom, who has formulated incremental model, was not content with the rational choice model. Okay, the rational comprehensive or synoptic model, he said, Charles Lindblom said, the rational comprehensive or synoptic model assumed that decision makers possesses the full information and could select the best alternative to realize the known objective. But practically, the rational decision making fails to describe the messy business that constitutes everyday decision and policy making in the real world. That means, according to Charles Lindblom, the rational decision making failed to describe the practicalities of the everyday decision making and everyday policy making in the real world. Okay, the rational comprehensive synoptic model was seemed to be ideal in the eyes of Charles Lindblom. He criticized the rational comprehensive or synoptic model. Okay, so what he said? He said the synoptic model suffers from multiple problems caused by its lack of adaptation to people's limited problem solving capacity, constraints of time and intelligence, costliness of analysis, various forms wherein policy problems actually occur. The third statement we know given in the question says it is synoptic model who acknowledges the limited problem solving capacities of the people or policy formulator. Wrong. It is actually the incremental model. Okay, the synoptic model suffers from multiple problems caused by its lack of adaptation to people's limited problem solving capacity, constraints of time and intelligence, costliness of analysis, various forms wherein policy problems actually occur, etc. Actually, there are 7 problems given. Actually there are 7 problems. We have written only 4 problems. Okay, so in the eyes of Charles Lindblom, the synoptic model suffers from these problems. Okay, next, what he talked about? He talked about incremental approach. Okay, Lindblom has attempted to deal with the problems of synoptic model by offering the concept of incrementalism and bargaining. Okay, so Charles Lindblom's approach was incrementalism and bargaining. Okay, as an alternative to traditional model of decision making, Charles Lindblom has presented the incremental model of policy making process. His article on the science of muddling through was published in 1959. which gained wide recognition in the development of policy analysis as concerned with the process of policy making. According to whom? What is incrementalism? According to Charles Lindblom, incrementalism is a method of successive limited comparison that would allow the decision maker to easily revisit the earlier decisions and correct them if necessary. That means the earlier decisions were acting as a base and incremental decisions will be added for the current decision making or the current policy making problem. Okay. Next, 1959. In 1959, Charles Lindblom spoke for the first time of muddling through, a level that featured prominently in the public administration review in 1959. Okay, we have already talked about this question is directly derived from public administration optional. Okay, in 1959, Charles Lindblom spoke for the first time about the muddling through. Muddling through is actually a term or a level, okay, which was used in the magazine Public Administration Review in 1959. Okay, according to Charles Lindblom, what is muddling through? Charles Lindblom said muddling through is a method or a science which advocates policy analysis. In criticizing the rational model as advocated by Simon and others, as we have already said, rational choice model or the rational model is not one theory, rather it is a family of theories. So just like Thomas Dye has given one rational theory, there is another rational model or the bounded rational model which is also given by administrative thinker Herbert Simon and others, okay, which is given by Herbert Simon. So Charles Lindblom has criticized all the rational models. In criticizing the rational models as advocated by Simon and others, Charles Lindblom has rejected the idea that decision making was essentially about defining goals, selecting alternatives and comparing alternatives. These things were idea of rational choice model. Charles Lindblom criticized that. Okay, he said he wanted to showcase that the rational decision making is simply not going to work in complex policy questions. Charles Lindblom says the rational choice making or the rational decision making is not going to work in complex policy questions. Why so? Because there are some constraints or limitations. What are those? Lindblom says the constraints of time, intelligence, cost and politics prevented policymakers to identify societal goals and their consequences. Okay. So what he put forward? He put forward disjointed incrementalist model. Charles Lindblom, in contrast to rational choice model, put forward disjointed incremental model. The disjointed incremental model was enunciated by Charles Lindblom in 1959. Okay, he was a professor of economics and political science in Yale University, New Haven, United States. Okay, so the disjointed incrementalist model was named in different literature as disjointed incrementalism, incrementalist planning, science of modeling through. It has also been called as the opportunistic decision making approach, the direct attack approach, the successive limited comparison approach. The model or the disjointed incrementalism model does not attempt a comprehensive, objective and rational approach to dealing with planning problems. Okay, rather it deals with such problems in a disjointed manner with only marginal departure from previous action or decision. That means previously whatever decision has been taken, it acts as a base, only some incremental improvement happens. Okay, only the previous decision is improved in an incremental manner. Okay, that's why it is called as incrementalism. Disjointed, why? Because the decisions are not logically related. Okay, that's why these are disjointed. The decisions are not logically related, they are not interlinked. Okay, they are not joined, that's why they are disjointed. Okay, incremental because the previous decision or the previous decision making is utilized as a base and current decision making is an improvement of previous decision making. Okay, that's why the disjointed incrementalism model does not attempt a comprehensive, objective or rational approach to deal with planning problems. That means the disjointed incremental model does not attempt a decision making from zero. Okay, it does not attempt a comprehensive decision making from zero. Rather, it takes the current base, the current decision making as the base and only improves the existing base. Okay. So, since the approach can best be regarded as partial because this is not a complete approach. Okay. The disjointed incremental model is not a complete approach, rather it is a partial approach. That's why it is treated as a trial and error approach. Okay, so what is disjointed incrementalism model? The model is tagged as the science which models through planning problems. That means the science which copes or manages planning problems. Okay, that is called disjointed incrementalism model, put forward by Charles Lindblom. This model is opportunistic in the sense that decision makers are not totally creative, rather they are reactionary. Okay, that means they don't attempt a decision making or planning from zero. Rather, they take as the current decision making as a base and only improve upon the base. The disjointed incremental model or the disjointed incremental model is called as the direct attack approach because each action is targeted towards finding remedies to specific immediate pressing planning problems. Okay. Disjointed incrementalism, in his strategy or in his work, a strategy of decision, that means the book was A Strategy of Decision 1963. It was jointly authored by Charles Lindblom and David Braybrook. Okay. In this book, Lindblom introduced the notion of disjointed incrementalism. Okay. So what he said in disjointed incrementalism, how the policies will be made or how the decision making will be made. He said the disjointed incrementalism is a method of decision making in which the comparison takes place between policies which are only marginally different from one another and in which there is no great goal or vision to be achieved. Okay, that means the previous policies are already there, so the current policy will be only improvement of the previous policy. Okay, no rational evaluation. Okay, and next, what happens? This is also a trial and error method. Okay, why so? Because the objectives are set in terms of the existing resources and policy making takes place through trial and error method. Okay, now question arises, why this model is called disjointed? Because the decisions are not subject to some kind of control or coordination. Okay, they are disjointed because the decisions are not coherent, not logically related, not interlinked, not subjected to some control or coordination. Okay, that's why the decisions are disjointed. Next, logical incrementalism. Okay, the incremental approach is identified principally with Quinn. That means who has discovered the logical incrementalism or who has put forward the logical incrementalism? Quinn. Quinn in 1980 has put forward the logical incrementalism approach. He was also influenced by Charles Lindblom. Okay, so Quinn developed the concept of logical incrementalism. What is logical incrementalism? Logical incrementalism is incrementalism in the service of overall organizational purposes. Okay, logical incrementalism is a method of incrementalism where decisions are interlinked. In disjointed incrementalism, decisions are not interlinked. Okay, there is no coherence. But in logical incrementalism, the decisions are logically interlinked. Okay, in logical incrementalism, the decisions are logically interlinked and they are incremental decisions in the service of overall organizational purposes. And as a result, the incrementalism was transformed into a strategic or long-term approach. Okay, logical incrementalism is a process approach that fuses strategy formulation and implementation. That means it combines strategy formulation and implementation. That means strategy formulation and implementation are not different, rather they are integrated. Okay, what are the strengths of logical incrementalism? The strengths of logical incrementalism approach are its ability to handle complexity and change, its emphasis on minor and major decisions, its attention to formal and informal processes. Okay, logical incrementalism would appear to be very applicable to the public and non-profit organizations. Okay, statement number IB and B. Logical incrementalism would appear to be very applicable to public and non-profit organizations as long as it is possible to establish some overarching set of strategic objectives to be served by the approach. What is logical incrementalism? As we know, logical incrementalism was developed by Quinn in 1980, who talked about logical incrementalism as a mixture of strategic planning and spontaneous adaptation to change. According to Quinn, constantly integrating the simultaneous incremental process of strategy formulation and implementation is the central act of effective strategic management. That means Quinn talked about effective strategic management. According to Quinn, the effective strategic management method is combination of strategy formulation and implementation. So strategy formulation and implementation are not different, rather they are integrated according to Quinn. What are the features of logical incrementalism? The features are, it focuses on using broad decentralized organizational strategies to guide decision making. That means what kind of strategies will be used in logical incrementalism? Decentralized organizational strategies to guide decision making. Interesting members of the organization who are familiar with the situation. That means the members who are at the ground level or the members who are working at the decentralized level, they will do the strategy formulation or the decision making. Okay. Strategy formulation and implementation are linked in a continuous improvement cycle. As you have said, strategy formulation and implementation are not different, rather they are interlinked. Okay, they are logically related. Decisions can be grouped or analyzed to shape strategy and move the organization incrementally towards its objectives. Why so? Because the decisions are logically interlinked and they are related to the larger objective of the organization. That's why the decisions can be grouped and analyzed to shape the strategy and move the organization incrementally towards its objectives. Next, decentralized decision making is politically expedient and necessary. Why so? Because the people who are have all the members, they are interested with the decision making process. Okay, and as you know, decentralized decision making is quicker. Okay, and is necessary. Now this question is over. Question number 1 to 10 is over. This one is question number 10 of OPSC preliminary examination 2021. We'll solve the rest 90 questions. Don't worry. Okay. Now if you have liked this video, then please do hit the like icon, share it among your friends, and don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. Please subscribe our YouTube channel, Hasil 24 IAS. Thank you. Thank you very much.